The Senate hearing room fell silent as Senator Cory Booker leaned toward his microphone, his normally friendly demeanor replaced by an intense focus directed at the young woman seated across from him. Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old White House press secretary, sat composed in her navy blue suit, hands folded calmly on the table, despite the tension filling the chamber. "Ms. Leavitt," Booker began, his voice carrying the gravitas of his years as a senator and former presidential candidate. "You've made numerous claims about the administration's border policy that simply don't align with the data. I have to wonder if you're deliberately misleading the American people, or if you're just repeating what you've been told to say." The pointed accusation hung in the air. Committee members shifted uncomfortably as cameras focused on Leavitt's face. This Senate oversight hearing was being broadcast live across all major networks, with millions watching to see how the young press secretary would respond to one of the Democrats' most eloquent speakers. What happened next stunned everyone in the chamber and watching at home. Without breaking eye contact with Booker, Leavitt reached into her portfolio and pulled out a document that no one expected her to possess. Within seconds, Senator Booker's expression transformed from confident interrogator to visible discomfort, as Leavitt prepared to make a move that would completely upend the hearing and leave one of the Senate's most respected orators momentarily speechless. Before diving into this remarkable political confrontation that has everyone talking, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive political showdowns that are reshaping America's political landscape. Senator Cory Booker had built his reputation as one of the Democratic Party's most articulate and passionate voices. The former mayor of Newark and presidential candidate was known for his stirring speeches, policy expertise, and ability to command attention during Senate hearings. With degrees from Stanford, Oxford, and Yale Law School, Booker's intellectual credentials were impeccable, and he rarely encountered opponents who could match his combination of rhetorical skill and policy knowledge. Recently, Booker had been particularly vocal about what he called dangerous misinformation coming from the White House on immigration and border security. In television appearances and social media posts, he had directly challenged the administration's claims, specifically calling out Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt for what he termed blatant distortions of reality. Karoline Leavitt represented a new generation in politics. At just 27, she was the youngest White House press secretary in American history, appointed by President Trump following his return to office. A former assistant press secretary during Trump's first term and communications director for Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, Leavitt had quickly established herself as a fierce defender of the administration's policies. Critics dismissed her as inexperienced and over her head, but supporters admired her unflinching loyalty and ability to handle hostile questioning from the press. The New Hampshire native had attended St. Anselm College before entering politics, and despite her youth, had already weathered numerous political storms. The Senate Oversight Committee hearing had been called to address the administration's claims about border security statistics, specifically assertions that recent policy changes had dramatically reduced illegal crossings and crime rates in border communities. Democrats on the committee, including Booker, had accused the administration of manipulating data to support predetermined policy positions. The stakes were enormous. Immigration remained one of the most divisive issues in American politics, and public opinion could sway congressional support for the administration's controversial border security funding request. If Booker could effectively discredit Leavitt's claims, it might undermine the White House's entire border security narrative. For Leavitt, this represented both a significant challenge and an opportunity. Standing her ground against one of the Senate's most formidable questioners could cement her reputation as more than just a spokesperson. Failing could reinforce perceptions that she lacked the substance to defend administration policies beyond prepared talking points. This hearing isn't just political theater, noted a CNN commentator before the session began. Booker has been preparing for weeks, accumulating data that directly contradicts the White House's claims. Leavitt is walking into what many see as a carefully set trap. What no one realized was that Leavitt had done some preparation of her own. Research that would turn what Booker intended as a public rebuke into something entirely different. "Ms. Leavitt," Senator Booker continued, his voice measured but firm, "last week, you stated that border apprehensions have decreased by 57% under the new policies. Yet the Department of Homeland Security's own internal reports, which I have right here, show only a 12% reduction. How do you explain this discrepancy? Booker held up a document bearing official DHS markings. Several Democratic senators nodded approvingly at the concrete evidence challenge. Leavitt remained composed. Senator Booker, I appreciate your question. The 57% figure I cited refers specifically to Sector B7, which was the first to implement the new strategic protocols. The 12% figure in that report reflects the nationwide average before full implementation. Booker pressed forward. That's not how you presented it to the American people. You claimed a nationwide reduction without any such qualification. With respect, Senator, if you review the full transcript of that press conference, you'll find I specifically referenced initial results from pilot implementation areas. The context was clear. A slight murmur went through the chamber. Leavitt was better prepared than many had expected. Senator Alex Padilla from California jumped in. Ms. Leavitt, even accepting your clarification, independent analyses from 3 university research centers contradict even the 12% figure. Are you familiar with the Stanford Border Policy Initiative report? I am, Senator, Leavitt replied without hesitation. That report was based on preliminary data from January. Our figures incorporate February and March statistics that weren't available when Stanford published their analysis. The back and forth continued for nearly 30 minutes, with Democratic senators taking turns challenging Leavitt's assertions. She responded to each question with specific details, never appearing flustered. Republican senators occasionally interjected supportive questions, allowing her to elaborate on administration policies. The tension escalated when Senator Elizabeth Warren took her turn. Ms. Leavitt, this pattern of statistical manipulation is troubling. You've claimed a 40% reduction in drug seizures as a success, when fewer seizures might actually indicate more drugs getting through undetected. Isn't this fundamentally misleading? Senator Warren, we track drug detection through multiple metrics, including confidential informant reporting, street price fluctuations, and interdiction rates. All indicators align with our assessment that total flow has decreased, not just detection rates. Warren appeared surprised by the detailed response but pressed on. Yet career officials at DEA have reached different conclusions. How do you explain that? The DEA analysis you're referencing uses a different methodology that doesn't account for the multivariate factors in our model. I'm happy to provide the committee with our full analytical framework. The exchange continued with increasing intensity.
Senator Raphael Warnock questioned the administration's claims about humanitarian conditions at processing centers. Senator Tim Kaine challenged figures on deportations. Throughout it all, Leavitt remained poised, responding with specific data,
points and policy details that suggested a command of the subject matter beyond what many had expected. Finally, it was Booker's turn again. The senator from New Jersey had been watching intently, occasionally making notes. As one of the committee's most skilled questioners, he had clearly been saving his most pointed challenge for this moment. Ms. Leavitt, he began, his tone now more forceful. You've danced around these questions admirably, but the fact remains that your public statements contradict data from career officials across multiple agencies. This isn't a matter of interpretation. It's about honesty with the American people. He held up a folder. I have here testimonials from 5 senior DHS officials who have stated, under oath, that they were pressured to revise their data to, support predetermined policy narratives. What do you say to these career public servants who have risked their positions to speak truth? A hush fell over the hearing room. This was the moment many had been waiting for, direct testimony contradicting Leavitt's claims. Several Democratic senators leaned forward expectantly. Leavitt took a sip of water, her expression revealing nothing as she opened her portfolio. Senator Booker, I'm familiar with those testimonials. I anticipated you might raise them today. She removed a document from her folder. What I have here may provide some important context regarding those claims. Senator Booker, Leavitt said, her voice steady as she held up the document. What I have here is a series of email exchanges between your office and those 5 DHS officials from the 2 weeks preceding their testimonials. Booker's expression flickered momentarily. These communications, which we obtained through a formal records request, show that your staff provided specific language for their testimonials and suggested, quite explicitly, how data should be characterized to support a predetermined narrative. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Republican committee members sat up straighter. "That's a serious allegation, Ms. Leavitt," said Senator Tom Tillis, a Republican from North Carolina. "Do you have those emails with you?" "I do, Senator," Leavitt replied, withdrawing a thicker folder. "I've prepared copies for all committee members. You'll find highlighted passages where Senator Booker's chief legislative aide writes, and I quote, "The language about data manipulation needs to be stronger to make the necessary impact during hearings." Leavitt began distributing the documents through a committee aide. Booker's face remained composed, but those watching closely could see the tension in his jaw. "Additionally," Leavitt continued, "you'll find a text message exchange between Senator Booker himself and Regional Director Hayes, where the senator writes, 'Your testimony needs to focus on policy disagreements framed as data manipulation. That's what will get media traction.'" The room had gone completely silent. Several senators were rapidly scanning the documents they'd just received. "Wait, just a minute," Booker interjected, finding his voice. "You're grossly mischaracterizing standard communications with whistleblowers who approached my office with concerns." "With respect, Senator," Leavitt cut in firmly, "the timestamps and full message chains clearly show your office initiated contact with these officials, not the other way around. And the language clearly shows coaching on how to frame their experiences, not simply responding to concerns they raised." She turned to address the committee chairman directly. "Mr. Chairman, I've also included documentation of meetings between these officials and 3 media outlets that occurred before they filed their formal whistleblower claims. Meetings coordinated by Senator Booker's communications director." Senator Chuck Grassley, the senior Republican on the committee, adjusted his glasses as he reviewed the documents. "These appear to be authentic communications. Senator Booker, would you care to respond to this information?" Booker, known for his eloquence even in difficult moments, gathered himself. "These selective communications are being presented entirely without context. My office regularly communicates with concerned government officials. That's part of our oversight function." "Senator," Leavitt responded, her tone respectful but firm, "Page 7 contains the full context of these exchanges. These weren't concerned whistleblowers seeking help. These were officials with partisan affiliations who were approached specifically because, as your aide wrote, they could be convinced to provide the narrative we need." Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri interjected, "Ms. Leavitt, are you suggesting these testimonials were politically coordinated rather than genuine whistleblower complaints?" "The evidence speaks for itself, Senator," Leavitt replied. "I'm simply providing context for claims that were presented as independent testimonials, but appear to have been carefully orchestrated." She then delivered her most devastating point. "Most concerning, on page 12, you'll find evidence that 2 of these officials received promises of future employment in exchange for their cooperation. This raises serious ethical and potentially legal questions." The revelation landed like a bombshell. Several journalists rushed from the room, presumably to file breaking stories. Booker, recognizing the severity of the moment, attempted to regain control. "Ms. Leavitt, you've come here with a calculated political attack to distract from legitimate questions about your administration's policies. This performance might make for good television, but it doesn't address the substance of the data discrepancies we've identified." Leavitt didn't take the bait. "Senator, I've responded to every substantive policy question with specific data. I'm simply providing relevant information about the provenance of testimonials that you yourself introduced into these proceedings. The American people deserve to understand when supposedly independent testimony has been coordinated for political purposes." Senator Ted Cruz seized the moment. "Mr. Chairman, given these revelations, I move that we suspend questioning of Ms. Leavitt and convene an ethics inquiry into the apparent coordination of testimony presented to this committee." Democratic senators erupted in objections while Republicans voiced support. The chairman struggled to maintain order. Through it all, Leavitt remained composed, occasionally making notes but otherwise sitting calmly as the chaos she had unleashed swirled around her. When the chamber finally quieted, she addressed Booker directly. "Senator, I came here prepared to discuss policy differences honestly. I still welcome substantive debate about border security approaches. But I also came prepared to defend both the administration's integrity and my own. The American people deserve better than orchestrated political theater disguised as oversight." The statement, delivered without anger but with clear resolve, left Booker momentarily without response. A rare occurrence for the typically quick-witted senator. Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee seized the opening. "Ms. Leavitt, while my Democratic colleagues gather themselves, perhaps you could elaborate on the actual border security data your office has compiled." Leavitt nodded. "Thank you, Senator. I've prepared a comprehensive data presentation that directly addresses the questions raised today, with full sourcing and methodological transparency." As she began presenting detailed statistics, many observers noted the remarkable role reversal that had occurred. What had been planned as Booker's cross-examination of Leavitt had transformed into her methodical dismantling of the credibility of his central evidence. By the time the chairman called a recess, the political dynamics had completely shifted. Reporters surrounded Leavitt as she left the chamber, while Booker huddled urgently with staff, examining the documents that had so dramatically changed the hearing's trajectory. What had begun as an effort to challenge a young press secretary's credibility had become a potential ethics crisis for one of the Senate's most prominent members, all because Leavitt had come armed with evidence no one expected her to possess. The aftermath of the Senate hearing exploded across all media platforms within hours. Leavitt's Booker began trending nationwide, with clips of the exchange generating millions of views. Political analysts from across the spectrum struggled to make sense of what they had just witnessed. CNN's chief political correspondent appeared visibly stunned during a special report. What we saw today was extraordinary by any standard. Senator Booker, one of the Democratic Party's most effective communicators, found himself on the defensive as Press Secretary Leavitt not only parried his policy challenges, but effectively turned the tables with evidence suggesting political coordination of whistleblower testimony. Fox News was more direct. "Booker ambushed. Leavitt exposes alleged witness tampering," read their headline, as commentators praised the young press secretary's preparation and poise under pressure. MSNBC attempted to frame the exchange differently. "Leavitt deflection strategy raises new questions about border data," though even their analysts acknowledged the significant impact of the revealed communications. The Washington Post published an analysis within hours. The Leavitt counterpunch: how the White House press secretary rewrote the congressional hearing playbook. The article noted that, regardless of one's political alignment, the tactical sophistication displayed by Leavitt, coming prepared not just with defensive data, but with offensive evidence, represents a potential sea change in how administration officials approach hostile congressional questioning. Social media exploded with reactions. Conservatives celebrated what they viewed as overdue pushback against congressional gotcha hearings. Liberals expressed concern about the implications for oversight efforts. Both sides recognized that something remarkable had occurred in that hearing room. By evening, detailed examinations of the documents Leavitt had presented began circulating. Fact-checkers confirmed the authenticity of the emails and text messages, though context and interpretation remained hotly contested. Senator Booker's office released a statement characterizing the communications as standard practice in working with concerned government officials and deliberately mischaracterized for political effect. The White House moved quickly to capitalize on the moment. Press releases highlighted Leavitt's fact-based defense of administration policies and exposure of political theater masquerading as oversight. President Trump posted on social media, "Proud of Karoline Leavitt for standing up to Booker's witch hunt with facts. This is why I picked her." Meanwhile, Senate Democrats held an emergency caucus meeting. Sources who spoke anonymously described serious concerns about the potential ethics implications and frustration that Booker's office hadn't anticipated the counter-evidence. Republicans on the Ethics Committee publicly discussed opening an inquiry into the coordination of testimony. The next morning's headlines reflected the continuing shockwaves. New York Times: White House press secretary turns tables in dramatic congressional testimony. Wall Street Journal:
Leavitt-Booker exchange raises questions about witness coordination. Washington Post, Senate oversight hearing becomes referendum on oversight process itself.
Karoline Leavitt appeared on Fox and Friends the following morning, where she maintained her measured tone. I came to that hearing prepared to discuss substantive policy issues and defend the administration's approach to border security with facts. I also came prepared to ensure the American people understood the full context of claims being made against us. When asked if she had deliberately set a trap for Senator Booker, Leavitt was diplomatic. I simply did my homework. In today's political environment, you have to anticipate that hearings are often more about political theater than genuine oversight. My responsibility was to ensure the American people received the full picture. Senator Booker notably cancelled a scheduled appearance on Meet the Press, citing scheduling conflicts. His office issued a more detailed statement, defending the communications with DHS officials. Senator Booker's staff engaged appropriately with federal employees who had expressed concerns about data manipulation. Guiding whistleblowers through the complex process of coming forward is part of Congress's oversight responsibility, not evidence of improper coordination. The political implications extended far beyond a single hearing. Democratic leadership privately worried about the impact on their broader oversight strategy. If administration officials began coming to hearings armed with evidence of behind-the-scenes coordination, it could undermine multiple investigative efforts. Media training for congressional staff was hastily updated. One political consultant told Politico, "Everyone's scrambling to review their communications with potential witnesses. Leavitt just changed the game. Now you have to assume that your back-channel communications might become front-page news." The hearing also transformed Karoline Leavitt's public profile overnight. Previously seen by many as simply a young loyalist, she was now viewed as a formidable political operator in her own right. Profiles appeared in major publications, exploring her background and rapid rise. The new face of White House combat read one headline. Conservative young women in particular celebrated Leavitt's performance.
Social media filled with posts from college Republicans and young conservative groups hailing her as a role model. Requests for her to speak at campus events reportedly increased tenfold. Within the White House, sources described a significant shift in Leavitt's stature.
She's always had the president's confidence, one senior advisor told The Hill. But now she's earned a new level of respect throughout the administration. People saw that she can not only defend our policies but take the fight directly to our, critics. The most lasting impact, however, may have been on the dynamic between the executive branch and congressional oversight. 2 weeks after the hearing, Leavitt appeared before the House Government Reform Committee. Observers noted that Democratic representatives took a markedly different approach, focusing narrowly on specific policy questions and avoiding broad accusations that might invite similar counter-evidence. Senator Booker eventually addressed the controversy in a speech at Princeton University. Without directly referencing Leavitt, he spoke about the evolving nature of congressional oversight in an era of extreme partisanship. He defended communication with government whistleblowers as essential to effective oversight while acknowledging that the process must remain focused on substance rather than political advantage. The Senate Ethics Committee ultimately decided against a formal investigation, issuing only general guidance about best practices for interaction with potential congressional witnesses. Political observers recognized this as a face-saving compromise that allowed all parties to move forward. For Leavitt, the confrontation marked a defining moment in her political career. In subsequent press briefings, journalists noted a new level of deference from even hostile reporters. Her command of policy details, combined with the demonstrated willingness to aggressively counter critics, had established her as more than just a spokesperson. 6 months later, when a prominent political magazine included Leavitt in its 40 under 40 list of rising political stars, the profile began. Before her Senate testimony, Karoline Leavitt was known primarily for her youth and loyalty. After her methodical dismantling of one of the Senate's most eloquent members, she became known for something else entirely, a new model of political effectiveness that combines detailed policy knowledge with strategic preparation and tactical fearlessness. The Leavitt-Booker exchange had become a case study in modern political combat, one that would be analyzed in campaign training sessions and communications classes for years to come. It demonstrated that in an era of carefully orchestrated political theater, the most powerful move might be coming prepared not just to defend, but to counterattack with unexpected evidence. For the American public, the confrontation offered a rare, unscripted moment of political drama, a glimpse behind the carefully maintained facades of Washington power dynamics. It revealed that in the high-stakes arena of national politics, assumptions about experience, authority, and leverage could be upended by thorough preparation and strategic thinking. The exchange between Karoline Leavitt and Cory Booker, ultimately, wasn't just about border statistics or witness coordination. It was about the changing nature of political authority in modern America, and how a prepared mind with documented facts could stand against even the most established voices. This powerful confrontation between Senator Booker and Press Secretary Leavitt reminds us that in politics, assumptions can be dangerous. It shows that thorough preparation and strategic thinking can overcome even the most formidable opponents, and that sometimes the most effective defense is a well-documented offense. If you found this political showdown as fascinating as we did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We'll be bringing you more exclusive analysis of the political confrontations shaping America's future. Comment below with which political face-off you'd like us to cover next.